On deck, the Let's Get To interview.
So we're excited to welcome to the show Mike Sellers. Mike is huge baseball fan, big baseball traveler. And Mike, first things first, before we dive in, I do have an apology to deliver to you from Baseball Santa. RE no George Springer for you. Did you get AJ Hinch?
I got AJ Hinch. That made me really happy. I was hoping for the double there and getting both of them, but I'm still satisfied we got at least one of them there.
Let me ask you this before we jump into all of this stuff. But how has the whole acquisition of AJ Hinch been? Because I got to imagine at least one Tigers fan was very like, I don't want anybody from that team. Oh, great, AJ's here. Like, how has that been?
I was one of the Tigers fans that actually wanted him because even though the Tigers are my team completely, I actually have rooted for the Astros the last couple of years anyways. As you know, I'm a big Springer fan specifically.
Yeah.
So I actually thought AJ Hinch was a great hire because the Tigers are in the process, about the same point in the process that the Astros were when they first brought in Hinch. So I feel like he's the perfect guy to take them to the championship, just like he did with Houston. So I was thrilled. As soon as I saw that he was a possibility, I had my fingers crossed rooting for him.
Well, I definitely am going to root for him too. There was a big collective moment during Astros Twitter when they posted the first lineup card, and we saw that very meticulous 3-colored markered handwriting, and there was a lot of people going, "Aw, Dusty just prints his out." So tell me a little bit about just your history with baseball. How long have you been into the game? How long have you been a baseball fan?
Okay, so I've been a baseball fan my whole life, but when I was really young, I was more of a football fan.
Okay.
Until I got this job when I was 20, and the company put together a softball team.
Oh.
And they asked me to play. Yeah, I'd never played before, but I was like, that sounds fun. So as soon as I started playing that, just like I said, I was already a baseball fan, but that just took it to the next level. And then a couple of years later, my brother asked me to go on a road trip, and I was like, I'll go on a road trip if it's to see baseball stadiums, but otherwise I'm just good staying here. So it's just taken off and gotten more and more every year since then.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, your situation. As we ask at the Oscars, who are we wearing today?
Okay, I got the Nashville Sounds here.
Okay.
I'm from Southwest Ohio, near Cincinnati, but Nashville's always been like my favorite city. I try to go there at least once a year. So I'm a big Sounds fan, and I'm wearing, if you notice, this is their older uniform set. I was super bummed when they changed the logo for 2 reasons. One is I just thought this one was like the greatest logos in all of minor league baseball. It just screams Nashville. And so I was bummed they changed it to anything.
Yeah.
Then when I saw the new logos, I was also just like, this is just kind of boring and dull and doesn't scream Nashville at all. So it's just like a lose-lose. So whenever I get a chance to pull a plug for these old logos, and I always do that.
Did they change when they became a Rangers affiliate?
Yep, that's they did. They actually changed to this when they went to the A's for 4 years, and as soon as they went back to the Rangers, they changed again.
The Rangers ruined everything. That's been the premise of my whole. So,
yeah.
And you got some hats back. So you're a big merch guy.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. I started about the same time I started getting in baseball. Kind of to go back to when I was younger, I was a baseball fan. More than I really rooted for one particular team, I just rooted against the Yankees. So always been one of those guys that's like, I don't have to just wear my favorite team's hats. Like, I'll get more of those. I don't know if you can tell back there, but I got a bunch of Tigers.
Sure.
But I basically rooted for anyone but the Yankees when I was super young. So when I started getting hats, I'm gonna get the Tigers, of course, first, and I'll get a bunch of new Tigers every year and whatnot. But I'm like, I'll wear anyone's hat except for the Yankees.
Except for the Yankees.
So I first started just collecting with the goal of getting the 29 other major league hats. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I didn't quite reach the goal. I got to probably high teens or so.
Okay.
And then that's when I started getting into minor league baseball, and I kind of took a pause from the major league hats and started getting as many minor league as I could.
One of the things, it's interesting, Eric the Peanut Guy, who I know you know on Twitter, basically has kind of a rule that he will not buy a hat unless he's at the park or been to the park. I, as you might be able to guess, don't have such a rule. What about you? Where do you fall down in that whole area?
I'm like you now. If I go to a park, that makes me want that team's hat way more. But
Right.
I'll just, like, whenever I see a deal online or just a hat that I just got to have, I'll get it whether I've been there or not.
So
I also like to get them. I also like to get them before I go to the park sometimes, so I can wear it while I'm there.
Yeah, I'm definitely have to play some like hidden camera tricks with my wife sometimes, because I'll buy one at the park and she knows I definitely packed one in our bag on the trip too. I just sort of, because you want to support, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
You are a big ballpark traveler, and I want to do major leagues first because you shared with me, I've never seen anytime I can see passion brought to a nerd level, I'm all about that. And you created a spreadsheet in which you ranked all of the MLB parks that you've seen. Please tell me about it, starting with how many and what some of your criteria, because you had Minute Maid, I thought, a little low for me.
Yeah, I don't know how, like, detailed you looked into those rankings, but I've been to 22 parks now, and the middle pack there, probably from about 9 to 17 or 18, are just a few points difference on my rankings. So
okay.
Yeah, I could just make a few slight tweaks, and number 17, whatever, could easily jump all the way up to 6 or 7. So even when I look at these rankings, I'm thinking the same thing sometimes. I'm like, no, wait, this one's not the 17th best, but I'm like, well, all these other 16 are probably better because there's just so many good parks.
Give me an example of some of the criteria and how you weighted things, because it's really fascinating what you went into.
Thank you. So I started on these road trips with my brother, and we're both big stats and numbers guys and stuff. So as we're going on these road trips, once we got to about a double-digit amount of ballparks, we're constantly talking like, oh, well, which one's your favorite? And just with no specific criteria other than just what's in our head and talking it through. But once we got to about a double-digit amount, we're kind of like, we got to come up with some sort of system for this. It's like, we know we're not going to get a perfect thing, but it's like, if we come up with a system, we'll tweak it as we go, and maybe that'll get rid of some of the bias. Like for me, I go to Comerica Park, and I can't help but think, it's a little higher than maybe it really deserves. But if we come up with a system, it'll take a while to master it, but if we come up with it, that'll just hopefully take away the bias of it. So what I did is came up with a handful of different categories, I think about 7 categories or so. And my idea was I'd score each of them just 1 to 10. And, the total points would dictate what the best one was. But as I was doing those categories, I'm like, some things are easily way more important than others. So like the thing I count as the most important is the structure category, which is obviously literally the stadium itself.
The building itself, right.
Exactly, yeah. And what I count as the least important, but something that still matters to me, is the stadium sign. So I'm like, that's a big difference. Like if it's a perfect stadium sign and I give it a 10, that can't possibly be as important as a perfect structure that would be a 10.
Right.
So I'm like, we got to do something about that. And then what came to me was, I don't know if you're a big football fan or not, but
yeah.
Okay, so you familiar with the passer rating then?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Which no one actually knows how to figure out, but yes.
Right.
It's right. Like war, but harder.
You're right, yes.
Yeah.
So I looked into it. Don't ask me now because I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I just looked into enough to get a general idea. And how they do it is, they multiply certain categories. So I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, instead of actually doing multiplication, I'm just going to give the higher categories a higher ceiling. So, for example, the structure is the most important thing for me. So I give it rating on a scale of 0 to 55. And once again, the stadium sign is what I count as the least important. So I only rank it from 0 to 5. So I'm like, perfect stadium sign, still only counting 5 points here. Whereas a middle of the line structure would be, 20, 25 or so. So I've got all those different categories, and the total perfect stadium would basically be 185 the way I have it right now. As I go on to more ballparks, I tweak the system from time to time. It might be like, you know what, the structure is a little more important than I thought it was. I'm going to cap it out at 60 now, or vice versa. So yeah, that's the basic general idea of the system.
But you know what though? It's fascinating because now that you're going through it, and I was thinking about Minute Maid, and like I would take points off for the fact that the train no longer matches the colors of the team.
Yeah.
So like it's that old black and red, and they won't paint the train. I've tried to start petitions. How much of it is would you give when the park, for example, has a kind of a lame, clearly just a sponsor name? Like if it's, you know, Dodger Stadium is one thing, but U.S. Cellular Field or whatever it is another.
Right. So I don't actually include that as any part of my actual rankings. Like it can be a terrible name, it won't affect it. Okay. But my personal feelings is I don't hate the sponsor names, the corporate names like most people do, as long as it's not something stupid like Guaranteed Rate Field.
Which I think used to be U.S. Cellular, right? Like
yes,
they had two in a row that were bad.
Yeah. So yeah, but something like I'm from near Cincinnati, so we got Great American Ballpark. When I was younger, I didn't even know that was a corporate sponsor. I just thought that's a cool American name.
Yeah.
So I like that one. And even if it's not, you know, something like that, if it fits the city or something like that, like Miller Park, until they just changed that, I thought that was a perfect match there. So I liked that. And Yankee Stadium and Dodger Stadium, those are, of course, yeah, historic, those are fine. But you get to like Marlins Park and Nationals Park, and I'm also kind of like, all right, let's be a little more creative than that, even if it does mean a corporate sponsor.
Actually, fair enough. So before we dive into what you got coming up in 2021, that's where we are now because time is a flat surface, flat circle. Everybody's going to want to know what your top and your bottom is. And have you ever thought about making these public so people can see them?
I have thought about doing that, and I just haven't determined like what's the best format for doing that. Like some of the people that I know on my what I call my Twitter family, which is the minor league baseball and just baseball fans in general, I've met on there, like you and Eric Peanut Guy. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to share these with you guys specifically because I know you'll enjoy it, and I get good feedback for what should I tweak and stuff like that. But I haven't come up with the perfect format yet for how do I just share this in general.
Yeah, it seems like that would be some sort of highly involved website, but I think people would go for sure. So what do you have as number 30? And or I guess number 22, since how you've been to.
Okay.
Number one.
So I will first say the 8 that I have not been to yet, just so anyone of fans of those know, but they're not in
yeah, right.
So I've not been to any of the NL West, none of those 5.
Okay.
And then I have not been to the A's, the Mariners, and the Angels. So okay. I haven't been to the new Rangers Park, but I was at the old Rangers Park, so that's one of my 22.
Okay. And do the Rangers, when you go to the new park, lose points for stealing the design of Minute Maid Park?
Actually, I have a category for uniqueness. So yes, technically they would. That would score lower on the unique factor. So yeah, but I was trying. Last minute when the World Series was being played at the new park, and I'd not been to any new major league parks last year. I'm like, I wonder if I can work this out to try getting one of those rare tickets so I can see a new ballpark this year. But by the time they announced fans were even allowed, and with the limited capacity, and being in Ohio, it just didn't work out. But yeah, so number 22, ironically, is other than my hometown Reds, this is the first one I went to. So when I went there, I was like, oh, this is awesome, just seeing a new park. But now that I've seen other ones, it's like, okay, this is not very impressive. Is Nationals Park. And It's not even so much that I think of it as a bad park per se. It's just that there was like literally no character to it. I didn't feel like it was anything special. It didn't have even that one thing that's just like, oh, this is really cool. And they had the opportunity to do it with like a backdrop of the Capitol or the monument, and they still just put these construction buildings in the background. I'm like, what the heck?
I've never been. I can just imagine, like, you could have turned it a little bit this way, and
exactly.
Yeah.
And you can go. There's like a spot of, I think it's left field. You can go like all the way to the top, all the way to the corner, and kind of look around, and you can see the monument. but
Kind of crane your
not,
neck.
yeah, exactly. So I'm not really giving it any credit for that.
Okay.
So, and then you want to know what the top one is?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, the top one for me with a score of 153 of the possible 185, so still not perfect, is Kauffman Stadium for the Royals. That one is just
okay.
Have you been there?
No, but I've heard nothing but great things.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's kind of hard to even explain somewhat, but there's obviously the huge, amazing scoreboard, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
The waterfall in the background, the structure of the building is unique with the shape is kind of hard to explain, but it's unlike any of the other ones I've seen. And then as a nice little bonus, one of my categories is the area. So that's kind of hard because part of me likes a downtown ballpark because there's things to do right there and you got better backdrop and whatnot. But part of me also likes the ease of just getting in and out, no problem. And and this one's 10, 15 minutes outside of downtown. It's almost like when you're road tripping and you get off to get some gas, you just get off the highway right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that in this huge parking lot. So parking's ease. So that one gets a little bonus for that too. But
the parking issue is real. I was disappointed, I think, when you for Minute Maid score in that area because of just everything that there is to do, right? All the good restaurants and stuff like that. But maybe I just need to take you myself. And
I think you do because I will say that the fact for me, I go to Reds games all the time, so I'm super familiar with the area and all that stuff. When I'm road tripping on all these other ones, most of these I've only gone to once. Most of them I only will go to once. So if I just go, if I don't know the right place to park, I might park in a worse part of town. Maybe it's some places it's a Saturday night, so it's more busy. Other times I'm seeing it on a Tuesday afternoon.
Sure.
So there's things like that are nothing to do with the park's fault. But it's just the way it is. And I do remember when I went to Houston, it was a night game, and where we parked, it seemed a little sketchier, and we had to walk farther. And so I scored it a little lower on the area because of that. And it is one of those parks that I was talking about earlier that's in a tight window to where if I just bumped it up a few points, it would bump up a handful of spots. So that's my excuse for that.
We need to fix that. Before we run, obviously minor league parks are very, very different compared to what you look for in a major league ballpark. For you, as someone you're visiting a new park, what do you look for and what makes a good minor league baseball stadium?
Well, on really any ballpark, first thing I'm looking for is the backdrop because, the structure, if I'm ranking the ballparks, the structure has got to be what I make most, or what I count as the most important. But the backdrop's number two, and that's to me what signifies the real the difference between every park. But with minor league specifically, one thing that you take for granted in a major league park that I like that's important to me in a minor league park is if you has a full wraparound concourse.
That was one of my questions.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's a big deal to me. Now, there's plenty of good parks I've been to that don't have that, but if it's got that instantly makes me like it way better.
Oh, well, no, I completely agree. Any place you have planned yet for 2021?
Yeah. So actually, I'm supposed to throw out the first pitch at 2 different minor league games this year.
Look at us. You and I are like a rotation.
Right? I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of them is the Quad City River Bandits. So I'm going to make that a 3-day trip and include the Peoria Chiefs and the Beloit Snappers on there.
Okay.
And I think the timing will be before Beloit actually moves into their new stadium, which is kind of a pro and a con for me. Obviously, I'd rather see the new stadiums, but it also means I can see that ballpark and go back again some other day and get 2 ballparks.
Sure, right.
So I got that one; those ones planned for sure. The other one I'm supposed to throw out the first pitch for is for the Indy League High Point Rockers.
Nice.
So I don't have the date scheduled for that one yet, so I don't have a full plan. But I know there's a bunch of ballparks around North Carolina, and I fully intend to see at least one more while I'm down there. And the last one I already have planned is my family. We go on a family vacation every year, and I'm part of a big family too. So it's hard to get us all to agree on dates and location and whatnot. And I tell them every year, I'm like, all I care about is go to an area that has some minor league baseball. I'm like, it can be an hour or two away. I'll travel, but it's just got to be in an area like that. So typically it's in the Smoky Mountain areas, which again is plenty to do. But this year we're going eastern Pennsylvania. So I was looking at dates and what teams are at home. And so I think I'm going to get to see 2 of the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, and the Reading Fighting Phils. Probably not all 3, but at least 2 of them.
That's awesome. I was hoping we would interact or overlap. Maybe we will. He is Mike Sellers. He is the baseball traveler. We're gonna have him back on the show a little later on. Mike, thanks so much for jumping on Let's Get To.
All right, thanks for having me.